From the local 33 Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Jesse Gunkel with a storm alert. We are officially underneath a tornado warning. This is for Ascension Parish and St. James until 2 p.m. this afternoon. Let's take a full screen. And again, this is a Doppler indicated tornado, as you see here, heading towards the Donaldsonville area. If you live in that immediate area, please take shelter immediately. As you notice here, that little area is moving towards the northeast at about 40 miles per hour. Again, this is Doppler indicating nothing has been visible yet, but again, there is that potential that there could be some debris with this isolated thunderstorm as it continues to track its way towards I-10. And as you see here, we remain underneath that tornado warning until 2 p.m. So that's for at least another 30 minutes out there. Just taking a look at the overall picture, and I also want to point out that the same area is also underneath a severe thunderstorm warning, and that is until about 1:45 for the potential for some gusts up to about 60 to 65 miles per hour. The areas impacted: Gonzales, Donaldsonville, Sorrento, and Belrose. And notice again that tornado, they're mainly concerned with Donaldsonville because that pretty much is currently directly under the gun at this point. I'm going to see if I can zoom in just a little bit here to give you some roadways, and we're looking at Donaldsonville, Burnside, Salzburg, and everything along Highway 70 at this point, all south of LA 75. A little bit south of Philadelphia Point, but all heading towards 22. So that eventually 22 crosses I-10, and then you head towards the Sorrento area. So for those travelers going back and forth from New Orleans to Baton Rouge, possibly even heading to Jazz Fest, just be on the lookout for a very strong thunderstorm kind of moving in that general direction. Now, I do want to take this off, and I'm going to kind of zoom out here a little bit, kind of man the radar here, and kind of show you what they're looking at. And as you see here, this is the area of concern. What you typically look for is bright greens and bright reds out there. Well, that is currently happening because the winds are going in opposite direction. All that means is we see the possibility of rotating winds. Some of those winds going away from the Doppler radar, some coming back towards the Doppler radar, mainly in the opposite direction. So this is the area of concern directly on top of Donaldsonville, heading towards Burnside at about 30 to 35 miles per hour, sitting a little bit south of Philadelphia Point and over towards the Salzburg area, I believe. And again, this is all heading towards the northeast. So this is what we've got going on. I'm going to kind of just give you a little bit of timing. We're talking right here, heading towards the northeast. And you'll see we're talking time of arrival for Hillaryville around 1:36, Sorrento around 1:52 if the cell continues to keep strength. Santa Ma, we're talking about 1:55, and AC should be arriving around 2 p.m. as it continues to track its way towards the northeast. Let's see what happens with the next scan out here to see if we actually see it tightening up a little bit or kind of weakening at this point. I still see again, the potential for something possibly on the ground is there. Doppler radar is definitely indicating that we could be seeing some very strong winds in the Donaldsonville area at this point. Let's zoom in again. So if you live anywhere near the areas of LA1, this is when you should be taking shelter immediately. Darrow, St. Elmo, all those areas in between, all those side streets, again, that is that area of concern. So up towards the Hillaryville area, towards Burnside, we're looking everything in between. LA 18, find that safe spot in the middle of your building. And again, obviously, stay well away from windows. And here's what you can do, just to give you an idea what you can do. Have that game plan. Now is the time to put it in action if you live in that Donaldsonville area. Because again, this is a tornado possible on the ground. Look at the lowest level of your home, well away from windows. Avoid windows and glass because again, that's if something gets thrown through the window, that is flying debris. Cover your head with a pillow or a mattress, and if you live in a mobile home and you still have time to get out ahead of this system, find something that's a little bit sturdier. We're talking concrete walls out there. We're talking things that aren't easily picked up or moved across the board. So here you go. When we look at the big picture here again, I'm going to drive you back and take a look at the warning out there, and you'll just see overall, again, we are keeping a very close eye on that tornado warning. And that, again, is for those areas just a little bit further south. Here is that pocket south of Gonzales. Still talking Ascension, just about to move into the St. James area. And as you see here, that could be a very nice couplet, the potential for It's obviously a rotating storm, but is there anything actually on the ground? So we're watching the area here just around Highway 70, Salzburg, through Donaldsonville, now actually just a little bit to the northeast, Burnside, around LA 22, heading towards the Sorrento area, eventually over towards McElroy, and even a little bit north of Himmel at this point. Again, this is where that tornado or that area of concern is for the time being. I'm going to kind of zoom out, just give you the Doppler radar and the warning. And here you go. Just time of arrival, Burnsville. We're talking Ascension. We've got about 7,600 people kind of affected by this system. Tornado warning in effect until 2 p.m. I'm just going to take a look over here from the National Weather Service just to see if we're getting any preliminary results or new information coming in. Still Doppler indicated they're still calling for the potential for some pretty large hail, up to an inch in diameter with this system. Continuing to move northeast at about 40 miles per hour. So as you see here, they haven't expired it yet, so they're watching it very closely. They could actually see a nice little possible hail shaft in this system. So you could be seeing some pretty large stones in that area. If you live in Burnside or just anywhere near I-10, you might want to get your vehicle underneath that carport or pull it into the garage just to give you, again, to save your car from hailstones. Just kind of catching up here a little bit. And as you see here, again, that is that area of concern. We're going to flip it back here, and we're going to dive into the storm and do a little bit of digging. And still looking at a pretty tight coupling, because once again, we're looking at that area with that bright red and the bright green. And in between, that is the area basically of concern. That's where we're going to see those stronger winds out there. But you can see where winds are moving in opposite directions, and that's by Doppler radar. That is a good indication that there could be possibly something spinning in that general area. We have no visible reports quite yet. We have nothing from emergency management or police saying there is a tornado on the ground, but we are on the phones right now trying to figure out if indeed there is something moving towards the northeast now at about 40 miles per hour, heading close to I-10 and LA 22 at this point. So if you know anybody that works anywhere along LA 22, you might want to give them a ring or send them a text message and just let them know that there is something of concern on the way. If you live anywhere here underneath that red box, I'm going to show you that in just a second again. Find that safe place immediately. And they've actually kind of taken Donaldsonville out of that warning, which is good. However, still including Burnside and areas a little bit further northeast now. They've actually included a portion. They've kind of adjusted a little bit further northeast to portions just across I-10 at this point. So that's still talking Ascension Parish, still St. James Parish, still kind of keeping a very close eye on it. Let's see here, Doppler indicated radar. Again, thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado located near Sorrento now, or just a little bit past Donaldsonville, still continuing to move northeast at about 40 miles per hour at this point. Also, again, large hail, a possible concern with this system. And as you see here, those could be some pretty decent hailstones around Donaldsonville and between Philadelphia Point, along LA 22, LA 1, somewhere in that area. And as you see here, that just goes right along the river, right by LA 44, heading towards Salzburg, and even towards the Sunshine Bridge. So you're kind of passing that area, moving northward at this point. Darrow, a lot of areas could be seeing that potential hail. A lot of this is what you're seeing on Doppler radar is kind of what was in the past with those last couple scans. So a lot of that is kind of moving ahead of this main little pocket out there. I do want to show you again. Let's get back to that. Now the good news is indication, it looks like it's starting to broaden a little bit and possibly weaken, but still an area of concern at this point. You can see when we take a big shot, notice some also potential rotation, maybe a little bit further down the road, just a little bit north of LA 3214 at this point. So a little bit south of Airline Highway, right where the two meet, just a little bit south or southeast of Sorrento at this point, where I-10 and Airline kind of cross. But again, that is the area of concern right around Hillaryville, Burnside, right where LA 22 and 70 kind of meet up, just a little bit past LA 44, probably dealing with some very strong winds at this point. So kind of moving down the line. And still, we also have that potential kind of big picture that we could be also seeing a few more thunderstorms popping up along that line. So here you go. We've got a tornado warning and a severe thunderstorm warning. Severe thunderstorm warning in effect for at least the next 6 minutes, possibly going to push it a little bit further northeast, so maybe Ascension, maybe even into northern portions of St. James Parish. But notice still that tornado warning, and I'm going to kind of outline it here to give you a little bit of information on it. Ascension, St. James, tornado warning still in effect until 2 p.m. They haven't canceled it quite yet. This is still Doppler indicated. The possibility of some flying debris. And for those caught without shelter, mobile homes may possibly be damaged because of this. Also roofs, windows, and vehicles. And also along with that, the possibility of some tree damage. So keeping a very close eye on that area. Once again, have that game plan. And if you have it, put it into action if you live anywhere underneath that red box, somewhere in southern Ascension Parish or northern St. James Parish at this point, because that currently is the area of concern. It's just one isolated cell that on the big picture is continuing to show signs of rotation. As you see here, let's see if we got an update here. No update quite yet, just kind of keeping an eye on the current radar scans. And let's get back to that velocity just to kind of show you rotating winds. And see, again, still showing some signs out there. As I mentioned earlier, we're watching a little pocket slightly further towards the east here, a little bit to the west of Lutcher at this point, around a little bit south of Airline. That's one. And here's another couplet heading very close to I-10 at this point. I'm going to see if we can actually pull up some traffic cameras out there, and maybe we can even get some visible signs just around the Sorrento area. So I'm going to look for I-10 and Sorrento here. Just bear with me. I'm kind of doing this solo here. All right, let's get back in here. I-10 and Sorrento. And as you see here, if we can pop it up to the actual camera here, you can see that the blinding rain kind of even moving a little bit sideways at this point. That is the area of concern. Trucks still moving eastbound and westbound at this point. But again, as you see, it is a very tough drive out there. Rain coming down in waves, torrential rain in fact. And that's exactly where that potential tornado will be crossing, just where I-12 and Airline meet. So keep an eye on this, and you see the winds are actually starting to go a little bit across the camera. The winds are starting to pick up. We got some new information out there, significant weather advisory, and that's for St. Mary and St. Martin. So again, that's a little bit further south. Keeping an eye on another cell that is developing a little bit further south. The concern still is that point, and you keep it up on the actual cameras out here, and you see how you can barely see the traffic moving along I-10. Right underneath there is where Airline and 22 kind of cross. Let's see here if we can jump out of here and find LA 22. Let's see, I-10 and Airline. Okay, working on this. Okay. All the way down, did I miss it? I-10. So for 30, where am I missing it? 110. All right, where am I? Okay, well, we'll just use this one right now. If Fred, you can jump in here. Yeah, main thing is, again, kind of keeping an eye on the Doppler Radar. We can go back to that quickly and just want to show you that we are looking at some visible signs, kind of broadening a little bit further east, but that rain is starting to come down at this point. And still kind of watching that area south of Sorrento, 10, right along Airline at this point. That's what we're watching, all heading towards the northeast. So if you live anything around Sorrento, I-10, obviously 61, we're starting to see those winds drive across the interstate at this point, and that's where the rain is really starting to come down. What is that, just a shot of
70 and 22.
70 and 22. What do we have of Airline? Because actually we're starting to move a little bit further past that point. So that's kind of on the backside of the cell. Okay, yeah, it's moving and inching very close to Airline right now. Let's see here. Let me zoom in a little bit to kind of drive you around a little bit. But yeah, we're kind of looking at pretty much the junction point is going to be around I-10 and just around Airline. Just a little bit further southeast of there could be that potential concern. So if we can pop it up on our Skycam, are we getting anything? That's where, no, that's not I-12. That's not the interstate, is it? 61 and LA2. A little bit first. No, I want the interstate. I want I-10. And I don't know if we even have that. Sorrento. 1 second here. Airline, Sorrento 20. I guess we'll all right, this is as close as we can get. Okay, you can even see some of that heavy rainfall out there at this point. Let's just drive this back a little bit, and you'll see here from Sorrento, still kind of keeping an eye, a very close eye on this area just around Airline and a little bit south of Sorrento at this point. Moving still towards the northeast. If there's any other additional updates, nothing yet, but we're kind of keeping an eye on the tail end of this line as those storms quickly are starting to develop across the area. Let's see here, we got Island, Florida. Let's get back to, we're going to get back to the interstate here where we're seeing all that travelers. All right, so here's 22, just give you an idea. It's south of 22, crossing 61 just around Airline, but you still see, and it actually looks like there's some hailstones possibly popping up on one of our cameras. It's a little bit tough to see out there. But again, that could just be very heavy rainfall with this camera. So something to kind of keep an eye on. That's a little bit south of I-10 and 22. Do we have any reports out there of anything coming into our newsroom, Fred? Okay, yeah, we're still working on that, just in case if there are some reports out there. But obviously, again, this is a possible tornado on the ground. This is just Doppler indicated, so there really is no quite guarantee yet, but still, we are seeing those rotating winds, and they are still holding together. A lot of times from scan to scan, you'll start to see if it weakens or if it starts to strengthen a little bit, and this one is actually showing that it's still kind of holding together a little bit with those stronger winds out there. Let's go back to the actual traffic cameras out there, and you can just see that the rain is still coming down pretty hard south of LA22. So that's the Sorrento exit, and obviously that area of concern is where Airline crosses I-10 at this point. A lot of traffic going eastbound and westbound at this point. So for those who are traveling back and forth, obviously this would be a good time to maybe stop at the exit before, kind of wait out the storm, because this should be racing through within the next 20 to 30 minutes out there. As you see here, storm winds, just showing you the big picture here that we remain underneath that tornado warning. We'll get you back to the actual warning out here. Well, here's the good news. It looks like they've just pushed it more so to, they've allowed that tornado warning to expire at this point at 3 o'clock. They may be readjusting it, or excuse me, at 2 o'clock. But yeah, let's see here. I'm kind of zooming out. I'm getting information, and as we go here, let's see here. The very latest coming in is a severe thunderstorm warning now until 2:15 for Ascension, St. James, St. John the Baptist. So some possible winds up to about 60 miles per hour, same cell just south of Gonzales, now moving towards the east at about 40 miles per hour. Obviously, hail still a factor with this system. The areas impacted should be reserved: Laplace, Gramercy, Lutcher, Garyville, and we're talking even all the way to the Wallace area. That's mainly areas just along I-10, and they've kind of outlined that area a little bit, the National Weather Service, because it's kind of moving in that general direction now, more so directly east and along I-10. Just to show you, we're talking more in this general direction towards areas just north of Laplace, towards where I-55 and I-10 kind of meet up at this point. Severe thunderstorm warning in place, but luckily for us, it does look like that they have canceled the tornado warning. However, again, hail very large. We're talking 1 inch in diameter and greater, possible some wind gusts up to about 60 miles per hour, but they're not seeing the signs of rotation that were currently visible with some of those earlier runs. So let's see, yeah, they allowed it to come out, will cancel the tornado warning, and they will continue with a severe thunderstorm warning for about another 30 minutes for a lot of areas. So that includes very southern portions of Ascension Parish, St. James. Again, you're looking at this area here kind of outlined, and that's where we remain underneath that severe thunderstorm warning. until about 2:15. So the greatest threats now, instead of those rotating winds, are going to be straight line winds, chance for some extremely large hail at this point, and the possibility, obviously, of some very heavy rainfall. We've kind of neglected that a little bit, but areas, we still have the possibility for another inch to 2 inches of rainfall over the next hour, maybe hour and a half for a lot of areas a little bit further south of Interstate 10 at this point, because a lot of those storms are kind of driving towards the northeast. We've already had some heavy rainfall with that earlier round out there. Well, still the possibility of more heavy rainfall on the way and sitting a little bit further south. Obviously, you can see that extends, big picture here. I'm going to kind of clear this off. And that extends in a much broader and wider picture all the way down to the coastline. So you're kind of looking at all that additional heavy rainfall kind of driving up in this general direction. New Orleans, swamped again. Jazz Fest, I saw puddles all across the, what do you want to call it, the fairgrounds at this point. A lot of areas underwater. Doesn't look like that water's going to go away immediately for today. Now again, once you get to the backside of that system, we're quickly clearing out. Even seeing a little bit of sunshine in the Baton Rouge area, starting to clear out near the LSU campus. All the way across the river, things are starting to quiet down. So area of concern still is that heavy rainfall for some areas, possibly in that inch category over the next hour. I still think for a majority of our viewing area, a lot of these storms will pass and they should be out of here by the time we get to 3 o'clock. After that point, then yes, we get back into a very gorgeous picture. A lot of sunshine, very decent conditions, and a nice stretch of dry weather moving into the weekend. So let's get back to those warnings. Here's the very latest. If you're just joining us, and earlier there was a tornado warning across the area. I'm going to zoom in, and that was just around portions of Ascension, just around areas south of Gonzales and around the Donaldsonville area. They have allowed that tornado warning to expire, but still keeping an eye on an area with some very strong winds just to the east of Sorrento, really just east of Airline Highway, crossing I-10 at this point. Some very strong winds and the potential for some heavy rainfall at points. Obviously, you can see those stronger winds even a little bit around the Letcher area kind of impacting. Notice how it's a little bit more broad now and not as tight as those earlier runs. So again, they've still got that severe thunderstorm warning in place, and that is until, I would say, for about another 15 to 20 minutes for a lot of these areas. And they may start allowing some of these parishes to get dropped from that tornado warning. We're mainly talking Ascension once it kind of slides a little bit further east, and probably St. James kind of moving more so into the St. John the Baptist parish and possibly over into the St. Charles, and then obviously going to be moving towards areas around the lakes and even including some areas just around New Orleans. So heavy, or at least the heavier rainfall starting to move on, but luckily they've dropped us from that tornado warning. Still an area of concern as there still is that potential for some large hail and still that possibility that we could be seeing some wind damage in that area. Wind damage leads to fallen trees a lot of times, down power lines. You could be without power for maybe a few hours, obviously, with this storm system coming through. And then obviously heavy rainfall. We've seen a lot of that water pond. It's been very saturated recently. So water is quickly, those areas that are typically prone to flooding, continuing to see that heavy rainfall across the area. Concern right now, and at least for the next, I would say about 20 minutes, it's those areas just around I-10 as this cell continues to make its way eastbound right now at about, let's see here, what's the newest information on here? Continuing to move east at about 40 miles per hour. So instead of more that northeast, it's more moving in a almost due east direction at this point. So severe thunderstorm warning, again, including a lot of cities in the way. So a lot of people are going to feel the effects of this system as it continues to drive through. Also blinding rainfall. Rain continues to be that issue at this point. So here's the deal. It's starting to move away. Severe thunderstorm warning. You guys know what to do because we are used to very strong winds across the area. Luckily, they have dropped us from that tornado warning. If you can pull me back up on camera here. And what I do want to point out is we're going to continue to monitor this. We're going to have the very latest on our website, beourproud.com. We're going to continue to stream there. We're going to continue to stream on Facebook. And we're also going to have the very latest alerts on Twitter and also on our Facebook feeds. And if you want to continue to follow this storm, just